And start all over. So, welcome everybody to the show. Welcome to the Silverlake Priestess Podcast. I'm your host, Jaime Black, and I'm here with my dear friend, Carmen Guerrero, Falcon. And tonight we're going to talk about your breath as your superpower. If you're new to the show, I want to welcome you. This is a place where I interview people doing spiritual work and serving their purpose in life as a way of their business. And so we like to talk about our spiritual practice and our journey to getting there and where we're at now. And so anyway, Carmen, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here with me.
I'm super excited that we're finally doing this.
I know. We decided that we needed to get careful that we don't get sidetracked. Carmen and I met during one of our yoga teacher trainings many years ago, and you know, we've been friends ever since. And we like I said, we took yoga teacher training together, and then now Carmen is like my favorite yoga teacher, and I take all of her classes, and she's done a bunch of incredible training in therapeutics and trauma and healing. And anyway, so we're going to get into all of that and talk about the work that you're doing now. But anyway, yeah, we definitely became buddies on our yoga journey. So welcome. It's a new moon. I feel like it's a good energy for talking about all of this, and also really talking about how we use our breath. So I like to start off with asking people to just share with us a little bit about their journey into their spiritual practice. And so if you would like to remember all the way back.
Well, I think my spiritual practices started in the womb.
That's a good place for it.
Yeah. It's been a minute of that, and I was a very curious child. So since very young, my mom noticed that there was something extra that I needed, and so I started working with meditation teachers and different type of people, not just therapists, since I was 9, I believe. And that created a very curious mind. And then fast forward 1,000 years later, being in LA, becoming a yoga teacher, teaching a zillion classes a day, and just driving up and down, seeing one client after another. I even got a couple of speeding tickets in the last, I don't know, 5 years or something like that. But you know, like, I'm breathing, I do yoga, I'm fine, nothing affects me, everything's perfect. And because that's like one of the big things that we have in this world that we live, like, we glorify being busy, and the more the better, and we just go, and we don't pause. And there was a sense of that, like, I already knew I was overdoing it. And about 5 years ago, my mom had a fall. My family is in Mexico, and she had a bad fall that put her in bed for a few months because she hurt her back really bad. And during that period of time of lack of activity and connection and lack of socialization and all, she came out like totally losing her mind and being diagnosed with dementia. And after seeing many doctors and talking to, like, getting second and third opinions on what the thing is, like, the conclusion was that she had vascular dementia caused by a bunch of micro strokes, or mini strokes, they call them. And even though research doesn't necessarily connect stress with dementia,
It doesn't.
It doesn't, but we do know how much stress affects the functioning of the brain. For sure. Like every time that there is stress, just because of the chemical imbalances that happen in the brain, the connection between both hemispheres decreases, and that is priority for the functioning of the whole body, not just the brain itself. So I'll go further into that in a minute. But anyways, understanding that, and understanding also, like, my mom never had like crazy stress symptoms. You know, like, she will forget things every now and then. She will have anxiety every now and then. She would lose sleep every now and then, but who doesn't? Like, pretty much if you are alive, you have those things happening into your life. And it wasn't until one day I'm running into a yoga studio and I cross paths with this other teacher friend, and I'm like, how are you doing? And she tells me with a big smile, busy. And that kind of threw me onto an unavoidable vortex of self-reflection of where is my life going with teaching 1,000 million classes a day, that even though I can have a pretty good meditation practice and a pretty good yoga practice and everything, where is my stress level? And that kind of reminded me of the root of yoga. Well, not the root, like one of the roots of yoga, that is the breath. And I started, you know me, I'm a little geeky. So I started diving a little further into the neurology of the breath and how it affects the body and how it affects all of our systems. And I started diving further and further and further and further into that. And now it's like my life starting to turn a little bit upside down, because that is my priority over everything else. And sharing that has become my biggest passion. So I still teach all the asana practices and I still teach the whole of yoga. But I feel that particularly in the last 3 years, my offerings have shifted into more helping people understand how to use the breath as their superpower, like how to use their breath to dive into a challenging moment in time or a challenging season in our lives without necessarily falling into illness and unbalance from being completely unaware of where our systems are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's so many things I can respond to, but you know, we hold our breath, we hold it. So we live in Los Angeles, and so people who live in Los Angeles and you know, anyone who teaches yoga here totally gets it, but you know, it's a really busy place here, and that's what's exciting about it. There's a bunch of energy here. There's a bunch of really creative energy here. There's a ton of spirituality here. People are very aware. They know about their astrology. They have a meditation practice. They have their yoga practice. And so, I mean, that's one of the things too that happened when I was someone who used to not have a computer, not have a phone, not have a car. I had 3 cars stolen in LA. So I walked around LA different chunks of time for years. I mean, now I have the insurance on my car in case it gets stolen, that doesn't ever happen again. But, you know, when I started doing the yoga and I was like starting to teach, it was like I had to have email. I had to have a cell phone that I had the email access all the time on the phone. And then I was going to need to be in the car to be driving like all around LA like a crazy person or just like an LA person all the time. And I was like, this just doesn't, you know, it doesn't make any sense, because this is just like so high intensity. And then, like you said, it's like you're in the car and you're like racing to get to yoga. And so then you can just like be in this container for like an hour and a half at least, right? So that you can like surrender into it. But it is like super stressful. So I remember when I met you, you were working in the fashion industry and you were working with a boss that was screaming and yelling all the time, and just like time, you had all these like commitments like on a daily basis of things that had to happen at this certain time, and all of these people that you had to satisfy, and all this like really intense. And then the idea was getting out of that and then getting into something that could like support your life and have your whole life be yoga. But then when you start doing that, it's just like a whole other game that you're playing. It's one of the games to play in LA. Like teaching yoga is like the super high stress situation. And something that's interesting too is I feel like people get into yoga and they find it, and maybe they're even teaching it, so they already have like a really thorough knowledge of what it is that they're working with. And then something like what you're talking about, like with what happened to your mom, like something extreme then happens in your life where then you can actually use all of these tools in a totally different way than you were originally thinking, or maybe what you were originally thinking that you were going to use them for. But then now it's like we've experienced some of our teachers like go through this, just where everything is like really intense and like at high energy, and where it switches to something else that is ultimately way more important.
Totally, totally. And it's like it's literally like medicine at the tip of your nostrils.
Mm-hmm.
And because you can really shift the chemistry in your brain through the breath. Like, this is like the part that is fascinating to me, and I get a little bit into the science that may not be super interesting for everyone, but please indulge me because I love talking about this. So every time that you take a breath, your brain scans your whole system. And if there is an area that has a little bit of dysfunction, your brain will know to send resources so that part of your body comes back to balance.
Wow.
That like,
yeah.
Every time that you take a breath, your sacrum, which is at the very bottom of the spine on the back of your hips, I'm getting too animated and my screen is flying, but every time that you take a breath, your sacrum pumps spinal fluid back into your brain, bringing information. Doesn't that make you want to breathe?
Yes. Like, let's all breathe.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like just that is like, okay, it's crazy. Now here is the other thing. We hear about prana, life force, for those of us that are more like in the Vedic traditions. For more Chinese medicine oriented, there is the chi, that is this magic energy that is like, where does that come from? Well, it lives within you. Yeah, but how? And how does the breath is connected with that? So, and this goes also for mouth breathers. When you breathe through your nose, there is a certain chemicals that are released and mixed along with the carbon dioxide in the air, that when you breathe in, that alchemy of those chemicals actually helps the oxygen move into the cell through the walls of the cell into the mitochondria, which is like the powerhouse of every cell in your body.
And this only happens through the nose.
Yes. Well, it does happen to some level, but there is a particular thingy that I don't remember its name. That's how geeky I am. I forget names. But there is a particular one that has to do with nitrogen, but I don't remember. That, along with everything else that comes in with the breath, helps the oxygen get into the cell. And that is the actual alchemy that it's referred to in many scriptures as the alchemy of the breath transforming into prana. So it's literally like, all we need is to breathe. And when we're super busy, the last thing that we want, or the last thing that we think we can do, is stop and take a moment to breathe. Like a lot of my clients, for example, one of the big obstacles that I face with them is that they think they have to retire in order to take care of themselves. Because we know that, like, you have a corporate job that is 9 to 5, but you're answering emails since 6 in the morning and you're finishing meetings after 6 p.m. And then you spend an hour in the car getting to work, and an hour and a half back because traffic is crazy. But if you learn that you can take little pauses during the day to connect with your breath, so your system is not constantly spiking, to keep it more regulated, to use your breath as an anchor. Yeah. That can be like just what helps you take quantum leaps into your life. Because then you sleep and you actually rest. And it forces you to be present. so you can become even more efficient with whatever you're doing. And on top of that, brings that felt sense of being alive and grateful for it. You know, like one of my teachers gives a great example of like that moment where you're almost done with the laundry, but you still have to put things back in the dryer, and you kind of sit back and take a moment, and you've been running all morning, and it's like you're not done, and you know that you're not done, but you have been doing so much. You can pause and breathe and have that moment, and that you can use your breath to create that moment throughout the day. It's like, why not?
I'm
Right?
totally breathing. Like I'm totally thinking about my breathing, and I'm totally making sure I'm breathing right now. I don't know if anyone else is having that experience while they're listening to this. But yeah, I'm totally breathing right now. So the thing is like how? So like what? You know, because we all know how to like take a breath, but then the thing is like we have to remember.
Yeah. And that's where like our sheer determination comes through. Like if you make the choice that you want to start connecting with your breath, you figure it out. There are so many apps that can send you reminders to take a breath, right? And especially now that we're spending so much time in the computer, I mean, the world's starting to open again, but we're still spending a lot of time in front of the computer. And for some of us, we spend a lot of time on the computer, and we're still spending time on the computer. And when the world opens back up, we're going to spend time in the computer, just in a different room. And how necessary it is also to set reminders to get up and stretch a little and move your body around and take that extra moment to breathe. So like that, you know?
So can we have an experience of this right now?
Yeah.
Because I was telling everyone, I'm like, oh, we're gonna get a breath instruction during this session. I'm hoping I'm gonna ask for it. So I think, I think right now would be a really great time.
Yeah, and we'll make it sweet and simple, so it's not like super complex or anything like that. And the one thing that I want to offer, like especially because I don't have direct communication with everyone that may listen to this podcast now or later, is to put yourself always first. Like the fact that breathing seems like the most natural thing to do in the universe, and you can hold your breath and go underwater and do 1,000 things with your breath, doesn't mean that is what going to bring the best benefits for you. So if as we do this little practice, you feel a little bit of the opposite, instead of relaxation, like a little bit of anxiety or something, just back off. You know, like the breath is very subtle, but it's very powerful. The effects on it, as I just described earlier, the effects of the breath impact your whole system. So you want to make sure breathing deeply is not going to hurt anyone, but you want to make sure that you bring the breath and that you bring the experience in the right time, or in the right space, in the right mindset. Like we have all been in that place where we are super anxious, and you're like, okay, just breathe deeply. You're like, I took a deep breath, I'm fine. You know?
Yeah.
So make sure that you bring it in the right mindset and that it feels cozy. So let's actually play with it a little bit. So I'm going to time us, and you can find your pulse either on your neck, or if you know how to find it, on your wrist.
Is that better?
Whichever one. Like whichever one you want to find. And I'm just going to time us for, I was going to say a minute, but let's just do 6 seconds. So start counting now. Stop. How many did you get?
I got 10.
I got 8, and I felt like I was like, oh my God. Okay. So now for 30 seconds. I'm going to time us again. You can relax your hand. For 30 seconds, breathe normal without too much attention to the breath. Just breathe normal. Good. And just count the number of breaths. Okay, finish this breath. How many cycles did you find? 4. Okay. So if it was a minute, will be 8. And the pulse, if it was a minute, will be 100. Right? I forgot how much mine was. I think mine was 60. You're so good.
So I know.
So now we're going to use the breath to soften the system a little bit more. So just close your eyes and sit back. If you have something to rest your back on, rest your back. Just close your eyes or look down towards your cheekbones. And without making a huge effort to control your breath, just allow your inhales to get a little bit longer and your exhales to get a little bit softer. And you're not doing the breath, you're just letting it happen. Then start counting the number of cycles, starting with your next inhale. Just continue soft inhales, soft exhales. And finish this last cycle. Then bring your fingers to your neck again and just count your pulse, starting now. Yeah. How many did you get?
I got 11.
Oh, so it raised.
Um,
So that's an example of how things can shift unexpectedly, right? Like mine dropped. Mine, I got 8 on the first one and I got 6 on the second one. So depending on how your system responds, you can alter your system. And here is another part of the story. The nervous system and the brain and the body have a two-way communication process. So if you think of something, your body experiences it as if it was happening, and your nervous system will respond to that, right? And it goes the other way around. You touch something hot, your brain receives the information, your nervous system contracts. So it goes both ways. The thoughts can alter your system and your system can alter your mind. And this is where it becomes interesting to understand and to learn how to use your breath to support your individual system. how to use your exhales to lower tension from your system, how to use pauses, pause between the inhale and exhale, pause between the exhale and the inhale. And all these different ratios can give you an extra tool to find softness. And to be honest, this little exercise of doing 1 minute of breath is not going to have a huge impact on your day. Like the moment you start talking again, and the moment you start getting excited again, or the moment you walk out the door, your system is going to respond again. There is another piece of research that shows that when your system gets aggravated and your brain is like filled with cortisol, it takes 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes for your brain to regulate. But in order for those 30 minutes, like it's not that you just had an argument, you walk away, you're walking around the block and you're breathing that way because you're upset and thinking about what you could have answered to that argument to have a different response. It doesn't work that way because you are still in the argument in your system, right? So you have to pet the cat, play with the dog, go with the kids, go outside, look, smell the flowers, drink some tea, like use your senses to move you out of the situation and try to calm your mind a little bit to not just keep going in circles around the same situation, and use the breath to help expedite that process. And so then is, okay, then what do we do? Right? Because like if doing just 2 minutes of the breath is not going to impact my day, and if it takes 30 minutes for me to relax again, then what's the point? And that's the big thing, is like one of the big teachings of yoga from the Bhagavad Gita, that you are entitled to your labor, but you're not entitled to the fruits of your labor. I had a client that was at one point, we have been working for a minute, and she asked me like, so with all these things that I'm learning from you, like, does that mean that you have no pain in your body? And I was like, heck no. Right? But I have freedom of movement, and I can pretty much do whatever I want with my body within certain boundaries, because I understand how it responds to things, and because I understand how I can align my body in a certain way and engage my muscles and use my breath to support me. So the bottom line is that you will learn these techniques, so you will explore these possibilities, not necessarily as a chill pill that will change your life overnight. It's a lifetime journey.
Practice.
And it's a practice, exactly. And as any practice, it changes, it evolves, and it brings so much information that as you explore it, you adapt it. Right? So with you, for example, and we have talked about this before, like for you that your energy is up here and grounding is not seductive, that will be kind of like one of the practices that I will offer to keep you more balanced.
Which one? Breathing.
Like breathing all the way down into your belly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I like to breathe out. I like to breathe out.
Exactly. And I mean, it's not like one formula works for everyone. In general, allowing your exhales to get a little bit longer and a little bit softer will help your system soothe.
That one does help me a lot. The doubling the exhales, that always does help me.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that I love the most, and using the pauses to help you lengthen those exhales more and more is also super helpful.
One of the main things that I also just experienced when we were just doing this exercise is that it brings awareness. It just brings so much awareness. So, I was thinking, because I'm like, well, I mean, I don't test all of this stuff regularly. And so I didn't know. I'm like, well, I don't know. Was it too high? Is my heart beating like too fast? And I'm like, well, I mean, I am doing a live podcast right now. So maybe that's why, my energy is going to be up there. And then so, but, while I'm sitting right here, like in silence with my eyes closed and then just listening, just it's going that's so interesting. It actually makes total sense that my energy would just be a little bit more like hyper and like fast running right now. But I just actually wasn't really aware that my system is like more hyped up like during an experience like this. It is true that when I'm done with this, I feel just like as if I've done a show, as if I've just done a performance or something. Like it's fun, it's exciting, and I do my weekly tarot readings after this because my energy is just I'm super engaged and I'm super alert and my energy is high. But then after I'm done with all of it, I mean, it just crash like so hard. So, that's just a little bit about my personal experience. But the point that I was trying to make is that just closing your eyes and breathing and then paying attention to your breath just taught me so much about what is going on with my energy right now. Because all that stuff is subtle and all that stuff is underneath. And whatever our will is or our intention is or what's driving like up here, that's what we're focused on. That's what I'm focused on. Not during any of this like setup, getting ready, like engaging with the person before we go live, going live in all of the right places, and all of that. I'm not checking in with my breath. I'm not aware of what's actually going on with my nervous system at
right. And that's what is so beautiful about this, and what is like the work is endless and the practice is endless, because at first you sit down for 5 minutes and try to regulate your breath for those 5 minutes, and those 5 minutes bring so much information that probably you stay dropped in your breath for like half an hour or 45 minutes, even if you just get up and get in the car and go. Probably the moment you pick up the phone, you're gone. But it's very likely that if you keep it within your own presence, just bringing your attention to your breath for this short periods of time keeps you aware during a good chunk of time. And little by little, that chunk of time becomes greater and greater, which is the same thing that happens with anything.
Right.
And so, yeah, I love it.
I talk about the breath a lot, as in, it's something that I love so much, the experience of the breath and the air that moves through like this part of my body, because I'm a talker. I love to talk. Like I get really excited and inspired and motivated by people. And I actually will channel information. So all of that is like very exciting. It's like I read cards. I was a waitress for a really long time, just engaging with people. I don't know. I get activated in that way. So I'm moving this energy like all around here. And then I sing. And so the whole thing that happens to my being during and after I've just spent like an hour singing is also this amazing, very spiritual, very exciting, very stimulating experience for me in that way. And then with the martial arts, which I'm doing a lot of again after having like a chunk of time in my life where I wasn't doing it. So whenever you do something like that, you just learn all kinds of things about this thing that you used to do that you're like, wow, I just really never thought about that before, because it was always in my life. And so the thing about martial arts is that I'm moving the breath, like I'm yelling, I'm engaging all of this part of my body. And so I'm like breathing in and I'm breathing out. And so anyway, it's just, I'm very aware that like breath is something that I'm really interested in. I'm really interested in this way that all this moves here. So to think that it's also the tool that I can use to like regulate my system, to calm my system down, to create peace. And I think too that when we get all like riled up about something, here, we're just all excited about something. We're not sleeping because all this stuff is going on and on in our mind. Like, absolutely, our breath is affected, and like, how are we breathing? You could definitely use your breath in a way that you could like induce sleep. You can induce the relaxation response.
And induce waking up as well and being activated and like just
right.
bringing the energy from almost underneath your toenails that sometimes is necessary. But when you're moving on, when you're totally depleted and you have still 1,000 things to do, you just end up getting sick. And so how can you also use your breath to keep your body energized without necessarily challenging your system to the extreme of getting sick?
Well, so let me ask you some questions about that. Like, how do you use your breath in those ways? Like, I've learned some stuff, from Gene Heilemann when I was first learning about pranayama and all of that. And, we would have the experience of rolling over to the side and doing that initially, and then breathing, and then doing alternate nostril breathing in the morning. And another Grail, actually, she's really into breath of fire. She doesn't even get out of bed. She wakes up, she does 3 minutes of breath of fire immediately when she wakes up every day. And I always say that I want to do that and I forget. But how do you use it? Like, so how do you use the breath to wake up? Say you're just tired and you don't want to get out of bed.
Either of those tools are helpful. Like breath of fire, I love it. And as Gene Hellman says, just to unclog things sometimes, not to, because breath of fire for me is very, like it just sends me up into the sky. And so if I overdo it, it's very unsettling for my system.
Because you're so fire.
I guess.
Yeah.
For some people, it's like, that's all they need. Just a little bit, like 30 minutes of breath of fire in the morning and they are set. That's their cup of coffee.
It could be that way for me. If I did that could be that way for me.
Yeah. And for me, it doesn't work that way. Like to me, I have to kind of like let it escalate gently. So I would do breath of fire, and then I would do Nadi Shodna. That's the alternate nostril breathing. And then I will do some holds on my inhales.
So for those who are listening that don't know anything about what we're talking
about it. So breath of fire is a forced exhale. It's all some people describe it as if you were receiving a punch in the lower belly. I like to think about it, I don't know. Think of a dog panting. First, you start from your mouth, and you close your mouth, and you keep doing the same thing through your nose, and you're only concentrating on the exhale. And as it gets more comfortable, it moves from the lower belly, not so much from here. Because when you're panting, it's up here, and you want to let the exhale come from a lower place. Nadi Shodna, which is alternate nostril breathing. Traditionally, you use a mudra where the index and the middle finger come together in the middle of the palm, and you use these two fingers. Lately, I've seen people doing it like this. Because this is complicated to think about it and to make it happen efficiently. So there is a purpose for this. So if it's accessible, do that. Some other people, when the wrists are very sensitive, and carpal tunnel is a thing lately. Well, not lately, it's been a thing forever. Fingers to the third eye or to the forehead. And then you use the thumb to cover the right nostril and your ring finger to cover the left nostril. And so in that sense, you're bringing to balance both energies. There is two main channels on the right and left side, kind of Ida and Pingala, that kind of, they don't spiral, but they cross around and they cross over where the chakras are aligned. And one brings the lunar energy, the feminine, the cooling essence of us, and the other one is more masculine, more fiery, more solar. So depending on the energy that you are wanting to awaken, if you're going to go to sleep, you want a moon breath. If you are going to wake up, you want a sun breath. And that's how you regulate it.
Which side is the moon? Which side is the sun?
The right is when you inhale through the right nostril, you're bringing solar energy. When you're working with the left nostril, is more lunar.
I didn't know that. I know that about we're balancing the right and the left side, but I didn't actually know that. Makes sense.
And so again, it's all about bringing everything to balance. So if you're super tired, you really don't want a breath that will energize you and send you to the sky, because then you're going to collapse and your system is likely to get fried. You just want a breath that can help you regulate. So moving with the tiredness that you are experiencing is not painful. So you don't feel like you're carrying a wet blanket. So you feel more free. And that's something that it can be challenging to grasp, especially for those of us that are like hyperachievers and type A's, hardcore, I'm gonna get it done now, that just pushing the system too hard is not that great either. So as long as you can bring it to balance, you can continue moving forward without necessarily frying it. But sometimes you bring it to balance and your body is like, no. And in those cases, I wouldn't advise to have 5 Red Bulls and 2 cups of coffee to keep going. I would advise to really rest. You know, because that's the big superpower comes with a big responsibility that is honoring what your system is telling you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. So I think that my brother might be listening. And so something that I wanted to share about the Nadi Shohan, and we're talking about the balancing both sides, is you can actually learn how to do that work without having to use your hands.
Yes.
So you can focus on inhaling through the right nostril, exhaling through the left nostril, and other things, you know, other patterns of that without using your hands.
Yeah, completely. And I mean, ultimately, all these are different tools to become more aware of the subtlety that is within us. But ultimately, like, because we have a body, we use it, but you don't have to have everything in the right place. I don't know what I'm saying, but you don't have to use your hands to do everything that you could do mentally and that you can energetically handle inside your system. Because that's the subtlety of it. Like, that will be what some people would say an advanced practice.
Well, and that's what you were talking about initially, is that the thoughts in the mind, and that's very trendy knowledge right now. People are really interested in the idea of being able to visualize something and have it happen. I mean, that explains a lot of it. Is like you can do that with your practice. You can do that with healing practices. You can do that with your breath, and literally just visualizing where the breath is going, which nostril you're breathing out of, in and out of, but also where you're sending that breath to inside your body in places that you're not exactly so sure specifically where it is, but you're visualizing that the energy is going there, or that the breath is going there.
Right. And that kind of leads way to another fun principle that I love holding on to, that is that the multi-dimensionality of the breath, right? Because I've been talking about this lately. I don't know if we had this conversation, but I don't know who told us, human beings, that any emotional process was a linear process and that there is a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. And that they are not. They are just expansive and spirally and twisted and turning and everything. Just processing anything that we're going through in life is not something that you get over. Some things you do, kind of, but as long as it's still in your awareness, it's not over. is not gone away, right? And as you were talking earlier about music, movement, and the breath are also those multi-dimensional tools that we have to help those energy of our emotions move in a multi-dimensional level versus just writing it on paper or just talking about it. That is very, it goes from here to here and back, right? Versus letting that big expansion that is not just with your body, but that is with your mind, and that is with your energetic body, and that has all these different subtle layers that get super, super, super juicy. And you can choose to go as deep as you want or keep it as simple as possible, and still will be rich. You know, like with one of my teachers, we were like breathing into the gallbladder and using the diaphragm to connect with the gallbladder and use the gentle bouncing of the gallbladder that it has with the liver to create movement. And when I talk about it, I get a lot of but it's fine. It's like, can you just move with your breath? Can you feel the gentle rise and release as you inhale, how everything just expands, and as you exhale, how everything softens? And then can you maybe visualize it happening into your muscles as well, or happening into your cells if you want to go to that level? Like letting these cells get all plumpy and fluffy and happy, and then softer with every exhale.
So interesting. It's something we all do. It's the very first thing that we do when we come out of the womb. So we breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't think about it.
Right. And you don't have to think about it. Like, you will not die. I mean, we're all gonna die, but you will not die because your body is going to stop breathing. You know, I mean, yes, we die because our bodies stop breathing, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Well, and then that's the thing too, is that the body does die when we stop breathing.
Yes.
And when the spirit leaves, there is no more breath.
Correct.
So it's very interesting because it's the very specific way that we interact.
And it just brings, like, the other thing that is huge for me too is how it affects your interaction with the world. Right? Because if you pause and breathe before you jump into a situation, your presence is different.
Mm-hmm.
How you engage with others is different. How others perceive you and how you perceive others is different.
One of the first times that I was ever learning about the breath or thinking about it, I realized that how I had been operating in my life had been to not breathe and to hold my breath, to not feel something, to be in like a really toxic situation, bad relationship with someone, just in an environment that you're just, for whatever reason, you're in it, you're not out of it, and continuing to experience something like that, and I would just not breathe.
Yeah.
And Jean would always talk about breathing. She's like, what does she say? Because she's like filling up with air. She's like, the air, it doesn't weigh anything. You're not gonna get,
calories.
Yeah, there's no calories in air. And it's interesting how we will hold our bodies. I think a lot of women experience this, at different times. We'll like hold our bodies in a certain way as to not have it expand, wherever that may be, where we don't want to expand into the back, we don't want to expand into our womb space, into our belly, we don't want to change the shape of this that we've like set to like be exactly, where we want it to be. And then it does cause us to be smaller. It does affect like confidence levels. It affects health levels. It affects mental health states.
Yeah.
So
And it's so complex, right? Like in that sense, socially and emotionally, is so complex how much our bodies reflect our mindset, our life journey, our experiences, and that in a way, by gently carving space with the breath, because if you don't want to breathe in your belly, I cannot force you to do it, right? Like, I don't know, like think of a muscle that gets knotted and you go get a massage, or you go with a chiropractor, or get any kind of body work, and it will release. Nobody can breathe for you. Nobody can make you breathe. And in the healing process, the breath, the contraction of the body will not allow that energy to move any further, to not expand, because it hurts. You know, like for some of us, like that we have had very painful experiences, some emotional, some physical. Bringing the breath brings you present into your body, and who wants to be in that body that has struggled so much? You know, so it's also a very gentle approach to that healing, because the breath will carve space at its own pace. You cannot rush it. I mean, you could, but it doesn't feel good.
It's just making me think, you know, in so many ways that like women have been controlled and constricted, but when they used to make us wear corsets, they'd squeeze all the breath out. They'd squeeze all the breath out and then tie that thing on to hold that body into the position. And they could not breathe. That's why they would faint, is because they couldn't get breath into there. And so if anything out of the normal, just like needing to breathe, you know, sit in the chair and just, you know, breathe like this. If there's any too much like emotion or things that started to go on in there and you needed more breath for that, they would just pass out.
Totally. And it moves the breath into I don't want to say it's a dangerous area, but it moves the breath into an area of the nervous system that equals fear. Right? Again, having that two-way communication. Your breath can tell your body that we need to flee, or that we need to fight, or we need to faint, or we need to collapse. And your system will make your breath act if you need to run, or to fight, or to collapse, or to faint. Right? So restricting the breath in that way puts your nervous system into high alert.
Yeah.
And creates like a plethora of situations that are completely undesirable. So it goes both ways. Again, like you can use it like any superpower. You can use it for good, or you can use it for bad. It's like the killing tool and the healing tool.
So how do we...
That was right.
It's true. I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
So it's like, how are you using your own breath? So when I was reflecting on, you know, I had been in this period of time in my life, just for a giant chunk of time, like I'd had stuff happen in my family that put me in a very like emotionally sensitive place, and I didn't want to like feel all these emotions, and then just being in my 20s and stuff that I was going through, and tapping into, you know, being an artist and having relationships that didn't work out, just kind of all of these things. I had all of this like sensation that I didn't want to feel. And so I wouldn't breathe. I mean, I wouldn't eat either. I mean, so there was just like all of this becoming, you know, such a smaller sense of myself inside of myself. to feel safe and protected, or whatever that was. But choosing to not be breathing, I wasn't pulling the life force energy into my body, and I wasn't thinking about any of that. Like, I wasn't aware about what it was that I was doing. I just learned that I could not breathe for a really long period of time. I could control my breath. And it's such a different experience than when you're like choosing to pull all this life force energy in your body, let it go into your dark places, let it go into the shadow, let the light be shined on the shadow. When you have things that you're holding, that you're hiding, that you're afraid of, there is a lack of breath that's happening. So totally, I mean, that's like an extreme way of saying it, whatever, you saying it like that, but it's actually true. So okay, so people are listening to this and, it's interesting, and maybe they've never done any of this kind of breathing before and stuff like that. So then, now what? Like, where do they go? And so what are you doing with teaching the breath? What are you offering people? How can they, where can they go to get this information to be practicing these things? What are you doing?
There are definitely many resources. What I am offering, I work with individuals and I work with groups. My group classes, you've been in them.
Yes.
We use the breath, and movement is a very, I don't have the right words to describe that, but it's a very, it's just movement. For those classes, the movement and the breath.
Yoga classes.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. It's yoga practices, and we use the breath and we use movement to help the bodies shake that dust off, move around. And I also work with individuals. What I can offer, though, I can offer a 30-minute free breathing call for anyone that feels curious. And we'll put the link on the thing, but you can, it's breathewithcarmen.com/call.
Okay, I'll put that. I'll get that link and put it in the show notes and in all the places. Okay, and so this is for people to connect with you and then talk about their breathing, and then you to lead them through some exercises and kind of see if they want to get into a deeper practice of working with you. And are you going to be leading groups? So the classes that I go to with Carmen, they just saved me this past year. When we all had to stop going out to our classes, Carmen started teaching her classes online on Zoom, as many yoga teachers did. And I was just so grateful. I have enough space here in my place where I could just lay down my yoga mat and do yoga in my house. And we did a lot with the breath, and a lot, especially, there was so much tension and so much fear and so much stress and frustration and just all of it. It was really, really, really helpful to move my body and to stretch and also to be together. And so I highly recommend any of that. Something that we haven't really talked about here is that she does a lot of work with therapeutics. There's, I've definitely had many injuries along, my yoga journey, and you've helped me so much with all of that, with working with my different injuries. I'm sending my mom to her right now. My mom's got carpal tunnel really bad, and Carmen has classes that are just they're therapeutic, only for people who can't even be in down dog, and so those are really powerful and really awesome and really helpful. But just the regular yoga class that's happening, that's awesome, and so grateful that you've been offering those all year. But what about just the breath? Are you going to be offering some group yoga, some group breath classes? Especially if we have all this conversation, you're gonna have to.
Totally. Yeah. I'm gonna actually start adding another class on April. I don't think it's gonna be a weekly session. I think that's gonna start, and maybe we can start at the end of the month, at the end of March. That will be just breath and restoratives and a little bit of yoga nidra. That's also another one of my passions.
Yeah.
Just to just to be in your body and to reboot the nervous system and keep going. So yeah, and that, I guess you will have to sign up to my newsletter to find out when that happens.
It would be really cool on I don't know. Life is so different now. So I don't know, how everybody else's schedule works nowadays, but I feel like it would be so awesome, like on a Friday night. I have a ton of classes that I'm in right now. It's all things that I really love, but it's such a huge workload that it's stressful for me. And it would be really awesome, like on a Friday night after my classes are over, just to be able to like put on you guiding breath. And whether it's visualization or working with intentions or just relaxing or something like that, it would be awesome to tune into something like that and have there be like some, meditation and then like guided breath. What a good thing to do. Things are opening up, yes, but then like you said, it's just like everything still closes early. We're still in, more than we're out. And
yeah, it's gonna take a minute for things to feel like regular to what we used to know, with some adaptations. So
I think about a really, really awesome opportunity that has come, has been offered through this past year just by default, is that we've been able to slow down a little bit. Many of us have been doing yoga at home. I'm kind of like, I don't really need to go. I mean, of course, it's fun to go to like a big, beautiful yoga studio, but like, I don't need to go to yoga studio anymore. Like, I actually love to do yoga in my own space. Of course, my cats are totally involved in the whole process, but it's really awesome just to be able to like be in my space, not have to get in the car and rush to class and stress about being on time or looking for parking or any of that. I'm just like at home. And then we can do shavasana, and sometimes I just like knock out, and I just knock out on my floor, and then I just kind of wake up, 10, 20 minutes later when, I'm ready to wake up for that. And it's awesome. I love it. And so, it's a lot of people who are doing this work like yourself. It does mean maybe that there is more continuous effort where some people have been able to be at home and like be on a break, and then like people like you who are offering what it is that you're offering, like you've been working the whole time, like you've been offering, what it is that you offer all year. But it's been such a gift. And I'm hoping that some of that will stay, because I'd actually like to keep that part of my life that way. It's also fun. Again, I'm very social. I like to go out and be, with people. I love to be in group. I love to be in community. But with the technology that we have nowadays and with Zoom, we've actually been fortunate enough for us to still feel like we're in community. I show up every week to the classes with the same people, and it's like a circle of us. We're all there together, and we're all in our homes, like doing our yoga together. And so we do get the sense of community. And then in another way, it allows the practice to really be mine in a different way, because in my space and the work that I'm doing with my breath and with my body is in my own space. And there's a way that I'm able to relax differently, and there's also a different way that I'm paying attention a little bit differently, just like what the exercise that we did just a little bit ago. Never has someone guided me like in the middle of my podcast, like, sitting here in my space, for me to be able to check in, with how it is that I'm feeling right now. I've been in a meditation class, or I've been in a yoga class, or I've been, to like an event or something where we're specifically going for all of that. But there's also something about being able to experience these things like in your life, in your space, right where you are, where it's real for you. And anyway, so I love that. I love it. So I'm going to put all of your information here in the show notes. And don't you have something also? Don't you have a guided meditation?
I do. Thank you for reminding me of that. I do have a guided meditation. We'll put the link on the thingy too.
We will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her website is Yoga with Carmen Guerrero, and it's CarmenGuerrero. Guerrero.
Rrero. And because it's so complex, like literally I had a client, she's Mexican, but her husband is American. And her husband was like, she said, my yoga teacher's name is Carmen Guerrero. And she's like, come at me, güero? What? So that's why there is the link. Breathe with Carmen is a lot easier. breathewithcarmen.com. And that will send you straight to the complicated spelling one.
Oh, that's really nice. I didn't know that you had done that. That's really nice.
So if you happen to go to the website, there is a little link to the meditation and to book the call as well. So
oh, that's really awesome.
But we'll put the links directly on the thingy.
On the show notes, I'll put it on Facebook. I'll put it anywhere where this video is. And I love to just listen to your voice. I mean, I always say that, it's the sound. We are all activated by the sounds of the voice of people who we are supposed to listen to and people who activate us. And I specifically love your voice and attracted to the sound of your voice. So for me, I love to listen to a meditation with your voice. I love to listen to a yoga class with your voice. So anyway, I highly recommend it to anyone who would like to get that, and it's free. And so is there anything else that you would like to leave us with or share with everyone before we get going?
We don't have to wait until the end of the day or until the end of the week to breathe.
Right.
Any moment, any time. You don't have to wait for a class. You don't have to wait for someone to tell you. Just breathe.
I love you so much.
I love you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming here and sharing with us and teaching us and giving us that opportunity to breathe. So valuable. And so with that, thank you everyone who's joined us. You can find me at jaimeblack.com. It's spelled Jaime, and my music is there, and my offerings are there, and my readings are there, and it's all there. All of my, the podcast, all the new episodes are on YouTube. You can listen to the podcast on a podcast app on Spotify, on iTunes. It's Silverlake Priestess Podcast. And for everything new, please join us Sunday nights at 7. And with that, I think to say happy new moon, everyone, and good night, and blessed be.
Blessed be.